The Rebellion Arc, Breaking the Nightmare System.
Welcome to this cinematic explainer where we're tracking the epic, reality-shattering journey of Jahan. We're going to follow him from a struggling survivor all the way to a transcendent rebel. Okay, let's dive into this massive question right away. Imagine you're just going about a normal day on Earth, and suddenly, boom, these massive, terrifying structures called nightmare towers crash down right in the middle of cities worldwide. Millions are dead instantly. If you survive, you get a system notification forcing you to become a tower walker, and your job is to climb to the top to save humanity. It sounds like your standard heroic setup, right? Well, actually, scratch that. Because as we're going to see, this entire system is completely rigged from the start. So picture over 15 years of absolute blood and agony. Slowly, humanity just gives up, but not Jahan. While millions of others either died or threw in the towel, Jahan fought completely alone. He dragged himself to the absolute hell of the 99th floor and fought the Ice Dragon boss for 5 straight years. And honestly, here's the craziest part about all of this. He didn't rely on some flashy, overpowered magic system. No, he used literally just one basic skill: the thrust. He just evolved it through tens of millions of uses until it basically became an unstoppable force. But you gotta wonder, why was he totally alone up there? Well, it all comes down to an item known as the Stone of Return. During that grueling 15-year climb, humanity's spirit just completely broke. People found these stones which supposedly allowed the user to rewind time back to the exact moment they entered the tower. The idea was to create a split timeline and try again. Almost everyone, out of pure, crushing despair, chose to use this stone to flee to a theoretical past. They literally left Jahan and the final heroic squad, Carpe Diem, to just die in the present. And that leads to the ultimate betrayal on the 100th floor. Jahan finally clears the tower. He's fully expecting to save Earth, right? Instead, he steps into a pristine control room and meets a demon named Beastlane. And Beastlane just casually drops the bomb that the apocalypse was a total illusion. Earth was never actually destroyed. People are down there living totally normal lives. The tower was literally just a brutal, rigged tutorial designed to cultivate human souls into high-value products to be sold off in a higher dimension called the Great Lands. Which brings us to a really devastating realization about those return stones. They absolutely never sent anyone to the past. Beastland corrects Jahan, letting him know it's actually called the Dream Demon Stone. Meaning all of Jahan's friends, the people who fought and bled right beside him, died for absolutely nothing. They were tricked into an eternal sleep by a rigged game. Think about how utterly terrifying that is. Your ultimate reward for fighting through literal hell is just a comforting lie, designed to harvest your soul. Beastlane actually offers Jahan a plush transfer to the Great Lands with elite sponsors, basically treating him like a prized racehorse. But Jahan, he is boiling with righteous fury, and he drops this incredibly badass line. Rejecting the system entirely, he absolutely refuses to let his humanity or the memories of his fallen friends be reduced to a literal price tag. He decides right then and there, he isn't going to play their game anymore. He's going to destroy the entire board. And to execute this rebellion, Jahan pushes past absolutely every human limit. 10 billion strikes. I mean, to put that into perspective, he hyper-evolves his basic thrust attack into a completely incomprehensible force that literally breaks the game's code. He absolutely annihilates Beastlane and uses that world-shattering momentum to thrust straight up, completely shattering the ceiling of the Nightmare Tower to break out of the system entirely. But the irony here is just brutal. Breaking out of the tutorial doesn't lead to some sunny paradise. Instead, he plummets downward into the roots of the universe, crash landing in a place called Chaos. Chaos is this brutal, lawless afterlife where souls end up after dying in the Great Lands. So yeah, breaking out of a living hell just landed him in a literal afterlife where everyone is already dead. It's this harsh wasteland where he immediately runs into fiery allies like Mino, the Witch of Massacre, and has to figure out a society built purely on the despair of fallen warriors. When he arrives at Gorgon Castle, his myth just explodes. See, in Chaos, everyone's soul is slowly rotting from a disease called spiritual corruption. It forces them to consume incredibly expensive monster horns just to stay alive. But when the local guards measure Jawan's corruption level, it is a flat 0. His spirit is utterly pure. He is completely immune to the decaying system of this afterlife, which, as you can imagine, absolutely terrifies and baffles the local authorities. So how is he so immune? Well, it's because Jahan isn't using the system's stats anymore. He bypassed standard leveling entirely by becoming what's known as an awakened. It's the super rare transcendent state you can only achieve by rejecting the world's rules entirely through 3 agonizing psychological steps. First up is doubt, literally questioning the very fabric of reality. Second is understanding the true nature of existence. And the third, which is definitely the most brutal step, is forgetting. You literally have to surrender the identity that the rigged system forced upon you. Because he's awakened, he doesn't see system data like HP or defense stats anymore. He actually sees the world's true particles, and this lets him pull off some completely insane, overpowered feats. I mean, he's killing multi-horned giant beasts with casual thrusts. He effortlessly punches holes right through legendary materials that master craftsmen can't even put a scratch on. He literally shatters magical law-binding decrees with raw physical strength. It completely baffles the elite fighters of chaos who are still trapped relying on the game's logic. This absolute, unwavering determination drives a hostile, one-man takeover of Gorgon Castle. Jaiwan doesn't just want to survive in chaos, right? He wants to dismantle the entire cosmic hierarchy. He walks in and asserts total dominance over these ancient, legendary fighters, guys who literally gave up their hope centuries ago. He beats them down, and not just physically, but philosophically. He essentially forces them to remember what it actually means to fight back against an unfair universe. But there is a horrific cost to wielding this kind of reality-breaking power. When Jaewon eventually faces the ultimate enemies of this realm, these cosmic entities known as the Monarchs, he has to push his awakening to the absolute limit. And doing this risks something called ghoulification. It's this tragic, terrifying process where an awakened pushes so hard they lose their own memories and existence, mutating into a mindless, apocalyptic monster. It becomes a literal, desperate battle for his own soul. And this is where the deep psychological layers of our hero are finally exposed. During a massive climactic clash with the monarch Garam, Jaewon's ally, Serwin, accidentally falls into his sinister, which is basically his deepest subconscious mental landscape. And what she finds there isn't some epic fantasy realm. It's just modern-day Earth. She discovers that Jaewon's inner guide, the absolute core of his unyielding power, is actually just a traumatized child surviving all alone in a dark alley. It really shows the deeply human trauma fueling his godlike strength. This realization perfectly highlights his ultimate trump card against the Monarchs. Unlike standard system adapters who are capped by external system limits and have to rely on finite spiritual power, the Awakened don't just use energy. Because they rejected the universe, they have to literally become their own unique world. Jaewon's inner world of trauma, doubt, and relentless thrusting manifests into an unstoppable, unique reality that simply overwrites the rules of his enemies. It's a real game changer. Pushed to the very brink of ghoulification, with his memories completely shattering under the weight of his own monstrous power, Jaewon faces the terrifying void of losing himself entirely. But he manages to claw his way back from the edge with this incredibly powerful, transcendent realization. Even stripped of his past, his system data, and his very identity, his sheer willpower remains. He exists, and therefore, he fights. After defeating the Monarchs, Jaewon sets his sights even higher, aiming straight towards the abyss, the absolute core of this nightmare universe. So, as he marches forward, we're going to leave you with this final thought. When you peel back the layers of an unfair world and gain the power to shatter reality itself, what do? Do you just tear down the rigged system, or are you destined to become its new god? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the system.